Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. So we are moving through earnings season, and we had a lot of the big names this week, but there's actually still a lot of good, volatile names coming up this week, which you'll see throughout this video. I will say that there were some encouraging signs in terms of action this week, right? Coming into the quarter, one of the things that I was kind of concerned about is that because it was an unusual quarter, a lot of companies guided early that maybe the volatility would be lower. Started to see some signs that volatility might be coming back. The bigger moves might be coming back. One thing to remember though is that you gotta stick to the strategy, right? You don't want to be like just like chasing certain names higher or lower. It's you want to have a game plan, stick to that game plan, right? And just go with the patterns that are are interesting that you have conviction with, and don't get caught up in like the FOMO, right? Because what Thursday and Friday showed us is that we're still not back in that everything bullish tape, all right? So like I said last week, because I put these videos together a few days before these companies report, the price to moves can change, but this is what I'm seeing right now, right? So just preface everything here. Before the open Monday, Tyson, about 5.25 is what they're looking for. This was in the headlines all week about they're closing their plants, right? But then you had the executive order to keep them open. So kind of like back and forth. Chart very tight, but you can see been stuck underneath a couple moving averages here, right? It just had like a failed breakout. Seems to me more bearish, especially after like the way March played out, starting to curl. If it can start to creep into like the mid 50s, really could really pick up some momentum. So it doesn't typically move a whole ton on earnings, but from a swing perspective, I think my bias is definitely bearish on this one. After the close Monday, all right. So a couple chip names. You have Cirrus, which is pricing in about 7, and Skyworks, which is pricing in about 8.5. Um, we've had so many semis report at this point that it's kind of hard to find out performance right now. Cirrus, I feel like has been a better name than most, and it seems like it's more of like a consistent mover than Skyworks. I guess I don't really have a ton of conviction with this play, but maybe if I look at it, maybe you could think about something like slightly longer term, something bullish, just to see if it kind of keeps like clawing back some of like what it lost from like the February January high. But again, it's not really like a high conviction idea for me. Shake Shack. This is also Monday after the close. About 6.5 is what they're looking for. Um, so volatility around restaurant stocks has definitely been lower this quarter. CMG was a decent mover, but compared to what they were pricing in, it was only marginally above, right? But then McDonald's not much, Starbucks not much, Domino's not much. So you get my point here. Shack lifted off its low, right? But um, still pretty heavily shorted. So I mean, there was some short covering into the drop, but even after the bounce, people still kind of like leaning short. Um, I, it does appear to have a path for maybe 6 to 8 points either way. But with options pricing in about 6.5, I feel like any strategy would probably need to get the risk down on that one. Regen. So before the open on Tuesday, about 31 to 32 points. Spreads are a little bit wider in those. It's been a top bio for most of 2020, and it's pulled back nicely ahead of its earnings. So it's not like super overbought going into results. I don't trade this too often on earnings, but it does seem like a better setup versus other quarters, especially because the last couple quarters have been decent on this. Um, Maybe snapback opportunity, right? Maybe look for, if it's a good number, maybe get like a quick move back up into like the high 60s, 70s, 80 area even. Plus, they've been like developing drugs for the coronavirus, so it's got some like headline positive tailwind behind it too. So that's kind of an interesting one for me. Maybe something longer term as well. Wayfair. So about 24 or 25 is what's priced in on this, and I really have no idea what to make of it. It's had just an epically large rebound off the March low, and they did say that their sales were stronger, um, and were stronger than guidance, but the last two quarters were very ugly, and now it's like materially higher than where it was before both of those quarters, right? So 2 quarters, and now it's higher. So I I really don't know what to make of it. It's heavily shorted, which could make this interesting, but the pricing on the option seems very, very, very high. So I might just be a spectator on that one. Tuesday after the close, a couple gaming stocks. So Activision, which is pricing in about 475, and EA, which is pricing in about 7.5. Activision, EA, kind of similar charts. Um, Both coming out of long ranges, right? And they're in kind of like solid bull patterns, like around their 52-week high. So the further back I go on EA, you can see what I mean. I'd say tough to make a call between the two, but I think maybe EA has a slightly more explosive pattern, so might look at that one more as like a bull idea versus like an Activision. Beyond Meat, also Tuesday, about 15 points is what they're looking for in Beyond Meat. This should be pretty wild. It's off its March low, and obviously like the move played out like sharper over the last 2 weeks. Volume is picking up, intraday ranges are picking up, so still pretty heavily shorted. Things are starting to move around again. I feel like 15, 20 points, not terrible on the pricing front. I feel like it could see like 15 or 20 points movement next week. It doesn't seem that much of a stretch. So kind of like a volatility strategy. Probably would get risk down though on both sides. Cheesecake. All right, so about 375 is what they're looking for in cheesecake. It was in a very tight range below 20, and then it broke out this week and it sank right back down. So it seems like it was just kind of like a short squeeze, unfortunately. Um, Again, restaurant stocks, they haven't really been great trading names this quarter, but my bias would probably still be bearish on this one. I'm just not sure if an option strategy makes sense though, so probably just watch. Um, Also Tuesday match, so about 9.5 points is what's priced in. Dating game definitely taking a hit during quarantine, right? But matches stock has actually been surprisingly resilient. So interesting, kind of some like mixed signals there. So either the market's overlooking the near term, or this could be due for a bigger move. 9.5 versus what it typically moves is a little high. So maybe I just might look at something speculative on the bear side, actually. Pinterest. So about 325 is what's priced in on Pinterest. They did give guidance at the beginning of April, though. So I'm not really sure what to expect on the actual report. I guess there's just better setups during the week. So I'm thinking I might just leave that one alone. Disney also, so another big name. 7 points is what's priced in on Disney, and I guess the main question is how bad will it be, but also how low is the bar, right? I think with a ton of their business shut down, the focus is going to be going forward, but obviously Disney Plus is still going to be an area of interest. I'm not sure this is a great quarter for an options trade, but because a lot of like these similarly hit hard like travel, leisure, entertainment stocks, right? They're not particularly volatile right now on earnings. But I'm definitely going to watch this for maybe like a possible swing trade after the numbers, see what they say, see what the stock looks like, and then maybe evaluate it for like a swing trade after. Um, Wednesday before the open, all right, a big healthcare name, CVS. So 375 is what's priced in on this. Um, Walgreens, decent results, but the stock really has been underperforming. UNH, Cigna, right, the managed care names, strong results, and they're closer to their 52-week highs. So CVS owns Aetna. So there seems like there's a lot of mixed signals for CVS, and that may lead to a bigger move. Stock looks set up pretty well for a volatility strategy to me. Option pricing doesn't seem too bad either. Um, okay, Shopify. 70, say about 78 to 82 points. Um, I really have no clue what to expect on this. Last quarter, it ran so hard into earnings, and then it gapped up even further. On top of that, this past month, it's just been like absolute straight up. So it's tough to know whether there's still room. Expectations are super, super high, but similar to Amazon, option pricing also seems high. And when you couple that with high expectations, it just seems like it's too tough to gauge. So probably leave it alone. After the bell Wednesday, Etsy. So about 9 points is what's priced in on this. This seems very much like eBay to me. So stock has had a huge run as people expect online sales to be up, but now we're going to see if the online sales actually were up, and it's going to be a higher bar for earnings. I do think it can move, but option pricing seems pretty high to me on this one, so I think it's going to be an avoid. Grubhub. So 7 points is what's priced in. This definitely could be interesting. They probably have seen some benefit for people ordering takeout, right? But and the stock is well off its high from 2020. Um, you know, I've traded this in the past. I do think maybe this is actually a little bit better scenario for a bullish idea, um, especially if the pricing comes down. So, um, I mean, there maybe something like speculative on the bull side, or even if the pricing comes down, maybe something lower risk, lower debit, like Strangle, something like that. Lyft. So 4.25 is what's priced in. So Uber reports later in the week. This is going to be before it, so it's going to set the tone for the two. I'm not a huge fan of this name personally, especially this quarter because the business has been so disrupted. Um, it really doesn't look like a compelling train, I'll be honest. So I'm probably just going to leave it alone. But I mean, it definitely will move Uber along with it. PayPal. 775 is what's priced in on this, and it's right at the top of yearly resistance, which you can see. It's had a huge rebound. Um, it is not the easiest stock to trade around earnings, but the setup is interesting. I mean, a measured move breakout above 120, you would think have plenty of room higher, and then a failure right at this kind of like triple top area could also be pretty substantial if it starts to roll over. Option pricing may not leave a ton of room, but if you can get risk down, maybe it's worth a look. Square also Wednesday after the close, so kind of like a similar stock to PayPal, right? Payment processing name. 7 points is what they're looking for. Um, so Square guided back in March, so that removes some volatility potential, but at the same time, the stock is in a pretty tight, like 2 to 3 week range here. There we go. So it's kind of a 2 to 3 week like tight range between some moving averages. If Square hadn't guided, I probably would have really liked this setup. Having guided though, it's a little bit tougher. I think you need to pick a direction on it, and I just don't know which way to lean. So I'm kind of on the fence with it. Might be more of like a game time decision for me. Zynga. All right, 80 cents is what's expected. So I haven't talked about this in a while, but kind of been an under the radar gaming stock. Looks solid, hanging near its 52-week high, kind of like EA Activision, right? Had a solid quarter in February here, coming out of a long-term period of underperformance, trying to turn the corner. Feel like if this quarter is good, I mean, kind of keeps momentum going. I mean, and this could really kind of make like a push into like the 9, 10, even higher area. Depends on like how good the quarter is and how much momentum kicks in on it. All right, before the open on Thursday, I guess there's really only one that I'll have my eye on. It's Teva. So about $1.25 is what's priced in. Generic drug companies, they were doing better, but they've paused over the last couple of days, like a lot of pharma healthcare names. Teva still above 10 though, and it looks decent on like the bull side. Um, Especially last quarter was pretty solid too. So I'm more bullish bias on Teva. All right, after the bell on Thursday, so I'm going to kind of lump these three together here. So Booking, which is pricing in about 102 to 105, those option spreads are real wide. Um, Uber, which is pricing in about 3.25, and then Zillow, which is pricing in about 6. So for Booking, Uber, and Zillow. The question is, how low are expectations? And I'd say of those three, Zillow seems like the more interesting one to look at because Uber will have Lyft report. Booking, I mean, I really don't know what like these travel stocks are going to do. If anything, it seems like like their business is just like on hold. Zillow though is different. I mean, to have exposure now to the housing market because they started buying homes, and I've read mixed things about whether people, whether the housing sales are going to just be like a quick pause and like come back. So, like this to me seems like it could be a mover still. It had a pretty big move last quarter. Option pricing isn't cheap, but it's also not as high as I've seen it. So I kind of like that one for like a volatility strategy. Dropbox, about 2 points is what's expected. It looks kind of interesting as an under the radar play. It's come out of like a long term downtrend, and you can see like got through the 200-day and um, had a really strong quarter back in February. Rolled over. Now it's starting to gain a little bit of momentum back. I feel like option pricing is decent, and it seems like if they could deliver, that'd be two good quarters in a row, and it could really start to turn the trend around on it. So I'm more bullish biased on that one. Corvo, so semi play. These are monthly options. About 10 points is what's expected. We're gonna have to see what Skyworks says because this probably is going to react to those numbers. It crushed estimates 2 quarters in a row, but semi's really mixed action right now. So this is going to be kind of a game time decision for me. And then last on Thursday, Roku. So 16 points is what's expected. But they guided preliminary sales just a couple weeks ago, and the stock went just like straight up after. So again, if companies guiding early like that to me is like a sign that want to be more cautious with options on it because it removes a lot of the uncertainty, a lot of potential volatility. I mean, 16 points, it's high for Roku. It's not ridiculously high, and to be honest, like Roku has been moving probably about that on its own, just on like a weekly basis, just without news. So it's not terrible. And with options, with earnings Thursday after the close, those could come down before that. So even though they did guide, I might actually still look at it. It's going to depend on what the pricing's like that day, what the setup's like that day. So again, it's going to be kind of like a game time decision for me on Roku. All right, then wrapping things up on Friday morning, Kronos. So about 65 cents is what's priced in. I'm actually more interested in the cannabis names here. Kronos has been pretty flat for the last like month and a half. And it seems like it's due for a move in either direction. I mean, it seems like it's set up well for straddle or strangle, some sort of volatility strategy. Looking for just like a move, off of earnings and out of like this recently tight consolidation. That's what I'm thinking with Kronos, right? So, hoping for a good week, hoping for some good action. Obviously, some of these are going to work great, some of them won't. But again, you stick with you stick with the game plan. You stick with the patterns, like the compelling patterns that you have conviction with, and like don't let that FOMO creep in because there's still a lot of stuff going on, a lot of headlines out there. So I don't think we're back in like that ultra uber bullish trend again, where stocks are just higher from here. So really got to be particular with your setups. All right. So if you like these videos and you're looking for more information on earnings trades, on options or option swing trades or options education, please follow up with the link in the description of the video for more information on options and play. Have a safe weekend. Have a healthy weekend. And I will talk to you all on Monday.